Bob Sirott, Marianne Murciano with you. And the latest on that Amtrak disaster in Washington State. The investigation is focusing on the train engineer and also a second person who was in the cab. Apparently, brakes were activated before that fatal crash. And I guess it's because we've been visiting every week here with Lou Cairo from Chicago's largest personal injury law firm, GWC, that when I was watching the news last night about the Amtrak crash, I started to think about the people who are going to be suing. And I bet personal injury lawyers in Washington State are very busy about now. Aren't they, Lou? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're probably scouring the earth over there looking for clients because there's unfortunately a lot of people that are in hospitals. And in addition to that, there'll be other types of disruption that, not even just the people that were injured in this, but just railroads that can't run their lines that are going to be making claims. There'll be the injury claims would be the worst, though. They'll be the most catastrophic, obviously, because people's lives have changed from people dying and people becoming seriously injured. And it will be, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes like a feeding frenzy where lawyers are looking for business when you have a calamity like that, which is kind of a shame.
And what happens in that case? I mean, lawyers are just trying to find these victims, or does it usually work that the victims have heard enough about the lawyers that they know who to go to? Well,
sometimes there is a lawyer in town who everybody kind of knows that person by reputation, by name or whatever, and they just would contact that person. Sometimes lawyers will also, you'll see billboards will be coming up, or TV commercials will come up, or radio commercials will come out. We specialize in train disasters. Like, oh really?
Because there's a rule about contacting people, or there's not?
Well, a lawyer ethically cannot pick up the phone and call somebody because they know that someone was hurt and try to solicit their business. They can't walk up to somebody that has a cast on or a neck brace and say, hey, what happened to you? Oh, my God, I see you. Oh, you were in a car accident. Here's my card. If you ever need any advice, I can help you. A lawyer can be reprimanded by the disciplinary commission for doing that because you can't advertise you can't solicit business that way.
Right.
Is it a problem when you have a disaster like what happened in Washington State with Amtrak, where a lot of people who were not among the injured claim they are, and how do you lawyers weed those folks out from the legitimate claims?
Yeah. Well, in a case like this, it probably won't be the case because they know all the passengers. There's going to be a manifesto ledger with all the passengers' names. They had 77 passengers and 7 crew members or whatever the number was. They know exactly who everyone is. But you see that when you have an L train derail in Chicago, New York, a big city, and there's ambulances come, and anybody could say. They go to the hospital and say, oh, I was on that L train that just derailed on Washington Street. And, well, how do they know? The doctors treat them, and somebody can claim that they were on the Amtrak. And those are scammers. That's a fraud. They should go to jail for that. That's not proper. But it happens every day.
And does there have to be a cause? Does this investigation have to be concluded before any legal action can be taken?
No. I mean, you'll see people sometimes they will rush to file a lawsuit the day after or within a couple of days of a tragedy, and clearly the NST, the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, has not concluded their investigation. The FRA, the Federal Railroad Association, has not conducted their investigation. People run sometimes to court for one of two reasons. A, you do it to get publicity and to say, hey, I just filed a lawsuit and I'm looking for more clients, subtly. Mm-hmm. The other way you do it is you say, I want to
You mean like for a class action?
No, not a class action. Just to say, let's say 70 people are injured. Somebody files a lawsuit in Washington and they get out, they do a press release, they get some media coverage, they're on the news. And yes, we filed a catastrophic case for Joe Schmo, who broke his fingernail in this accident. And we're interested in representing more people. Certainly we're the largest firm. We can do this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And they're hoping that their phone starts ringing.
Right.
Other people file the lawsuit right away because they want to get subpoena power. And that's the right reason for a really good lawyer to file a lawsuit expeditiously, because with subpoena power, you can start not requesting items. You can demand that you get things. You can start subpoenaing video surveillance and evidence and manifestos and make sure that nothing happens to the train. We want to inspect the train. We want to inspect the tracks with our own experts. We don't want you hiring some contractor to go fix the tracks because maybe there was a defect in the track. Some contractor had a $180 million contract, part of this whole big infrastructure money that was spent to build this railroad track and this new line. Maybe the contractor screwed up. Or maybe it was the conductor who was driving, or the engineer rather, that was operating the train, who was talking to his girlfriend on the telephone, or was talking to a conductor and not paying attention that he's going 8 miles an hour coming into a turn, which is really dangerous. And it was the first time they ever had a train on the track. So people want to make sure the people that the lawyers that represent seriously injured parties or families of those who have been killed in this incident want to know what the truth is, and they want to lock that evidence up ASAP. And sometimes that's probably the best motivation for a quick lawsuit.
And there's another story in the news that I'm sure has, lawyers thinking about this also, is that bus accident that happened on the excursion in Mexico.
Yeah.
12 Americans, I think, or several Americans were
Well, they
on
were on
board
a
that
cruise
bus.
ship and they went on this excursion.
Yeah, and 12 people died and a lot of people got injured. So what happens if you are traveling and, a disaster like this happens? Where do you find the first lawyer that you can find,
Well, in
wherever
this case,
you are?
you're in another country.
You're in another country.
You're a passenger on that American cruise line, though, aren't you?
Right. Those.
Who do you sue?
Well, those situations are really difficult because when you go to another country, the laws state to state are very divergent in our country. The laws from our country to other countries are completely different. So the goal is to try to find a nexus between that bus accident and the American cruise line and an American venue. So like 4 years ago, there was something similar that there was in Mexico. They had a bus went from Mexico to Los Angeles. And we had a client from Chicago who bought a ticket to get on that bus. She was traveling to visit family in Mexico. She had her ticket to go from Mexico to Los Angeles, and in that ride, she was killed. The bus turned over. Very similar to what you saw here. Happened in Mexico, but she was going to the United States. She bought her ticket from literally a little ticket booth in Chicago. And the big fight was keeping the case in Chicago, applying Illinois law versus California law where the bus was going, or Mexico law. So we just settled the case for a couple $1 million, literally like 3 weeks ago. But it was a real battle because you have all these international treaties and you have all these different laws for conflicts of interest. Conflicting state laws, choice of laws. It becomes very complicated. And like you said, where do they find a lawyer? You get hurt in Mexico. Do you go find a Mexican lawyer, or do you go to the United States where you live and find a lawyer? You go to the United States.
Right.
You find the best qualified lawyer who will hopefully, get you tied up with the best experts and the best local attorneys to help.
And
you
if
just settled for a couple of million? Is that why you have a new suit on today?
In fact, I could afford this beautiful suit.
I knew it.
So, and if you're traveling, because people have this, in their minds right now, if you're traveling, are there things you can do preemptively to, be ready for anything? Or
not
insurance.
Really. I mean,
or...
if you think about it, you put your trip on your best credit card where you get insurance if something happens where your trip gets canceled. But you can never anticipate a calamity, and if you can, don't go on the trip.
Right. If you're thinking that way, right?
Right.
Before you go, Lou, what is the Amtrak Reform and Accountability Act? Because we've been hearing about this in connection with what happened in Washington State. What's that all about?
Well, this act was a piece of federal legislation that came into place many years ago, and the purpose of it was to design a cap so that you can't bankrupt this governmental body, Amtrak, or anybody associated with the railroad industry. As you recall, years ago, we're bailing out car industries, bailing out banks. Well, there was a period where they bailed out the railroad industry, and what they said was they passed legislation that said in the event of some type of a calamity, if you kill one person or you kill hundreds of people, the maximum that Amtrak, the contractor, the owner of the rails, the owner of the service, et cetera, the maximum you can get in a railroad catastrophe is $200 million. Then in 2008, there was a catastrophic case that occurred in Philadelphia, and President Obama passed legislation that said, well, this case would be worth way more than $200 million. It's not fair that these victims are being further victimized when you're talking about hundreds of people splitting up only $200 million, which is not a lot of money this day and age when you've got hundreds of victims.
When you have hundreds of victims.
So Obama had passed legislation, and they increased it to $295 million. So if you had, like we just had recently in Chicago, we've had a couple verdicts on wrongful death cases: $31 million, $38 million, and $45 million for wrongful death. We had a young girl that was paralyzed at O'Hare, $140 million verdict for one person who was paralyzed. You have 3 people that have unfortunately been killed in this incident so far. You have multiple people critically injured. They may pass. They may be vegetables. They may be brain damage. They may be in wheelchairs. The value, $295 million. When you start spreading that out, and you talk about they've got to repair the bridge, they got to repair the track. There's going to be claims from Amtrak loss of service against the company that built the railroad, and the tracks. All these different claims. $295 million will be gone in a heartbeat. And what will probably happen is all these parties will pony up the max of the 295, and they'll give it to the court, and it's called an interpleader, and say, Judge, you let all these victims figure out who's going to get the money, because we're not going to fight 150 different lawsuits.
Sure.
When our exposure is 295, here's the money. You guys figure it out, like they did, like in Katrina, the hurricane, the same kind of thing.
And does that end up being better or worse for the clients?
It ends up being
for the victims.
It ends up being better because they're not fighting liability. They're just, unfortunately, they're fighting other victims, saying, "No, Marianne, my case is worth more money than your case.
Yeah.
You lost your mother, but I lost my wife, so I should get more money than you should get." So they're not fighting the defendants, bad guys. They're just fighting other victims, which is kind of unfortunate.
Interesting. Lou Cairo from GWC, and his number is 312, and then just keep dialing 9. 312-999-9999. And Lou, it's been a great meeting with you here on the radio every week. We look forward to hooking up with you down the road again.
It's been wonderful. I will miss you guys, but where you lead, I will follow.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas to you and all your listeners.
And one more question, Lou. On our last day, Friday, so I'm boxing up a couple of things from the office. So if on my way out carrying a box, and I have to get everything out of here Friday, of course.
He has nothing.
And you're still employed.
If I trip and
999
and I hurt myself.
999.
Okay. And what's my cap? $295
There ain't no
million?
cap, baby. Not for you.